The lights are off and away they go.
Extremely loose. He's managed to hold on and
He missed the complete that. He's crazy
Other side,
stuff.
Freitas is on the grass on the infield before. He slides through. He tags Richard Eck.
It's often claimed that 12 hours of Sebring is harder on a car than 24 hours of Le Mans. Once a driver experiences the jarring bumps of these old airport runways, then they begin to understand why. But without the modern tech most sports cars racing enjoy today, those bumps may just shake a few of our competitors loose. Who can withstand it all? We'll find out as we get ready to watch round 10 of the iRacing Kamel GT series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth today is Adam Young standing in for Sean Ambrose. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Ducky Beard. Adam, you've had your fair share of tackling Sebring before with the Pacific Majors. Tell us what they'll be up against today.
Yeah, you know, these guys are going to be up against probably one of the most bumpiest tracks you're going to find where modern sports cars race. Of course, we're not dealing with modern sports cars here for today, but it actually just adds to the challenge. Track length is about 3.7 miles or 5.955 kilometers. It is 17 turns, and we are going to be talking about a 30-minute race here for today. Now, of course, I mentioned the bumpiness of it. That's going to be pretty much jarring to a lot of these guys, and they're going to have to try to combat that, and that could mess up some corner entries and stuff like that, which leads us to some trouble areas and passing areas, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But first, let's go ahead and take a lap around.
All right, we've got Clayton McLeod in the GSRC Nissan, so let's do a lap around Sebring. Turn 1 tends to be a good passing spot in most cars, but in the Nissan, this thing is terrifying. You carry a ton of speed through here, but just pray that the bumps don't unsettle the car. Keep on hugging the right side on the short run down to turn 3. There's a late apex here, but make sure not to clip the inside curb. From there, you're right into 4 and 5. Once again, turning in late is the desirable line through 5. But here you've got to try and get the power down quickly. big bend and the blast towards the hairpin are flat out the whole way. This will probably be the most popular overtaking spot since it's a long acceleration zone into a very heavy braking zone. Just be careful when surrounded by other cars because it'll be easy to overshoot and plow into someone ahead of you. What's really tricky is trying not to spin the car out as the turbo kicks in. Turns 8 and 9 are simply about lessening your steering input to keep your speed up. And then comes another good place to attempt to pass, Cunningham. But if you find yourself side by side coming off the corner, it can be bad news. Collier is narrow with very little runoff on either side. Then there's the difficult curved braking for Tower. This is another inside curve that I highly advise not mounting. At last, there's a little breather until you have to attack Bishop. Take this as a single arc even though there's 2 apexes. On exit, make sure and stay to the left for the best entry into Jean de Bien. There's paved runoff, but getting to slow down here can really hurt you. And it's critically important to get a good run off of Le Mans anyway. Once you get dumped onto the Ullman Straight, it's a long, long ways until sunset. Even though the draft isn't as effective in the Nissan, getting a bad run might mean finding yourself too wide into the corner, and that is going to be extra scary. Just look at how much speed you take into the kink. Manage the car over the bumps and then smoothly bring the power back in. This brings us back onto the front stretch to start it all over again. Hopefully you kept it all together and have now finished a lap around Sebring. That onboard should really give you a good sense of just how jarring these bumps are. Now we have a championship that we want to bring you up to date on, and this is not the official iRacing championship. This is the VCR championship that the drivers organize themselves. Let's go to the GTP standings first. At the top, the Castrol Jaguar Racing team leads the way with McLeod and Ritchie driving in that car. Now, of course, they don't actually share a car in this series, but they do race as teammates. All-American Racers are in second. That's Mukanos and Olenek in that machine. And then Team Sauber Mercedes, of course, in third with Jas Malukas and Lake. I don't think we've seen Jas Malukas race in the broadcasters races yet. And then the car that this actually is, the Nissan Motorsports Europe team, holds down fourth with Nelson and Leonard in that car. We also have the GTO class that are racing in the Audis. Adam, what's the championship look like over there?
Well, on top of the leaderboard is Cunningham Racing. That's the Bakke and Seymour team up right there. Full-time Racing coming in second right now at 272 behind. Of course, with 2 guys and plenty of racing still left to do. That is not an insurmountable gap. That has Quinn and Samarin. Roush Racing with Laughter and Hagner in third, and then Leitzinger Racing in fourth, and that's the Shanahan and Jones duo.
And those lovely graphics of the car is provided by Andrew Bakke, so a huge thank you to Andrew for giving us those assets to use for our broadcast. Now, this track is a fairly long lap, Adam, so I have to expect there's a few places to try and overtake around here.
Yeah, you know, the main area is going to be right off the bat. It's going to be turn 1. The problem with turn 1 is that you've got to complete the pass quickly because it quickly narrows down into that turn 2 and 3 area, and 4 and 5, which is an entire complex right there, where things also tighten up quite a bit. So 1 can also be a trouble area that you have to watch out for, but it is one of the better passing opportunities on the racetrack. So turn 3, of course, going into that tight left-hander, as I was just talking about, it is tight, but it can be an opportunity to make a move if you need to make one. The hairpin's a good place to do it. That's going to be coming off the Big Bend Straight and heading down into that right-hander there. Cunningham, and of course, everybody knows Sunset. And if you don't know Sunset, you'll see it quite a bit here for today. The track really opens up. You can fit 3 cars almost through there, and people have done it. I've seen 4 wide through there, but it is, in my opinion, probably the best passing opportunity on the track.
Certainly be interesting to see where they do it. Of course, this is mixed class racing, which means that will throw a whole nother wrench into the mix of these drivers, not just overtaking within their class, but having to go between each other. And as we can see, the Audi 4-wheel drive little sports car has quite a bit of top speed, I've heard from the drivers, so it can tend to surprise these Nissan drivers with how quickly it runs down the straights. And knowing that, if you were in one of these, where would you expect to try and get by one of the slower classes, Adam?
I think I'm a little bit more conservative when it comes to that personally, but my personal best options to make a pass with the slower class is actually going to be the areas that bookend the front straightaway. I want to think about Sunset, and I want to think about Turn 1. The hairpin, okay, but those would be my two best with an okay one in there.
That sounds like probably the route that I would go as well. I'm kind of with you. I tend to try and play it safe in this sort of racing just so I can get to the end as we watch Andreas Slisson continue his qualifying lap. And this is official racing, so their qualifying, of course, is given 2 laps out there. They're all by themselves with the track with nobody else on it, even though they're racing it at the same time. And if they have an incident, if they put a wheel off, if they spin or touch a wall, that track is discounted. So it's got to be clean, something that can be difficult around here. John Keefe currently running in 7th out there in his Nissan, the Indiana driver. One driver I've been watching in qualifying, Serge Surovikin, a new one. He just exited out, unfortunately. Had a couple of bad laps, so in qualifying, he is well down the order. Be interesting to see if maybe he's got a little bit better pace with him being new. Could have some surprises up his sleeve. Stephen Denton in Georgia just finishing his lap up on the Ullman Straight in his Nissan. And based on what we're seeing here with some of these drivers here in qualifying and with the short bit of warm-up that we've gotten, who's looking strong to you today out there, Adam?
Well, I do like the likes of Nicholas Makanos. You can't ever count him out. Philip Blake, we've always seen being strong. Looking at the GTOs, Cohen Klotman is one guy that's, once again, always strong. And I always apologize before I say his name, but Ove Trengerud. He put on a pretty good show there last week, so we'll see what he can do here at Sebring.
You got it right the second time, Trengerade. So you've got it now.
Slowly but surely, I'm getting better at it.
Well, thankfully, you'll have Sean coming in back next week, joining us once again, and he can try and butcher names instead. But with qualifying is over, so let's go through the grid and the GTP class. Keith Ritchie leads the way. No surprise there. He's been in great form lately, and in fact, he's almost got 2 seconds. No, I take that back. 1.2 seconds over the next car down. AJ Bear starting on the outside of row 1. Nicholas Mukanos will be starting in 3rd with Philip Blake on the outside of row 2 in 4th. Clayton McLeod, who did our lap guide, he's going to be starting in 5th, followed by Ben Laughter in 6th. Then in 7th, it's John Keefe with Hideki Koivisto starting in 8th. Mark Witz will be starting in 9th with the top 10 rounded out by Colin Stark. Serge Surovikin, remember he had trouble in qualifying. He's going to start 11th. And then Jim Kessler will round out our GTP field in 12th.
Well, starting on the pole for the Audi GTOs, Cohen Klotman. Alongside him is going to be Ove Trengereed. Anthony Rossomano starting in 3rd in the Audis. Andrew Stilanis sitting 16th. Alexander Link in 17th overall, starting on the inside of row 3 for your GTOs. Andrew Bakke out there as well. Another guy to keep an eye on. Jose Caballero is out there. He is going to be starting in row 10. Cedric Poyle, he is not a name I recognize out there, so we'll have to see how he does, but he is starting the back half of the GTOs. Brian Shanahan back there as well, and Jess Coleman.
And then Stephen Denton will round out the field officially, but he will start at the back of the GTPs as iRacing will grid him within his class. They've taken off on their pace lap, and then we're getting ready to go racing here for 30 minutes around Sebring for round 10 of the iRacing Kamel GT Series. Roof pace car leading the way, coming around that almost terrifying turn 1 with all the bumps through that quick corner in this car up to the narrow turn 3. And there we see the Audis, which should probably have a little bit of an easier time with the bumps. Would you expect the four-wheel drive to really help them out on a track like this?
Actually, I would. Having a little bit of power in all 4 corners will probably help you get over some of the sudden oh, I've got power down here, but not here, kind of feeling. So the Audis will definitely be feeling a little bit better, I think, than what the Nissans will. But the Nissans with a little bit more weight in the rear, they'll still be moving around quite a bit. And even if you look really closely, especially when we have some onboard shots later, you can see how some of the inlets move around through the bodywork, and you can see the range of motion that the bodywork and the suspension and everything's going through. And it's pretty incredible that they're able to keep all four wheels on the ground through some of these bumps.
Is there anything you can do, Adam, to set up a car to be both fast and compliant over these bumps? Or is it a constant compromise between the two?
Well, usually when I raced at Sebring before, Pacific Majors and stuff like that, it's always been about compromise because your main goal is to survive. Here today, we've got a 30-minute sprint race, so you might be a little bit more trying to live on the edge, so to speak, and maybe take a few more chances with your setup. It's just one of those things that you kind of got to kind of account for the environment.
Absolutely. Coming off Tower Corner, our first class leads the way down towards Bishop. Another fast series of apexes. This one probably a little less scary, a lot less flat, at least from my experience in most cars. Didn't have to duck it up here for Jean Debienne. And this is where I really start to notice that this is used to be an airport, is these sections here, Adam, where it's just kind of, it seems like paved runoff like modern tracks, but it wasn't really built that way.
No, it is. And if you really want to see the airport history of this track, there's some documentaries out there on YouTube and stuff I'd highly recommend. But Sebring definitely has a history of military service also. Dating all the way back to World War II with some of the airport parts of this track and what it's become here today. So definitely worth checking that out. But it just it adds to that old surface that these guys have to run on and work with today.
I've always wondered if someday the bumps get too bad that they actually have to repave this track, and it'll certainly change the character. And I'm sure a lot of drivers, there'll be some drivers who'll be happy and some not so happy if it loses that. Meanwhile, the roof pace car coming up to the front stretch, peels off into the pit entrance. Green flag waves immediately, and Keith Ritchie with a huge jump. In fact, a horrible start for AJ Bear, though.
Yeah, AJ Bear got a really bad start there, and already you guys can see how wide turn one is and the kind of moves that you might be able to make, but you got to be careful because it narrows up really quick.
And let's go to the GTO class, Adam.
Yeah, looking back at the GTOs now, these guys are away and doing just fine. Cohen Klopman got a great start along with Ove. Anthony Rossmano lost a little bit of ground off the start. Andrew Bakke is having to get stuck behind him too. But it does look like everybody in both classes has made it through the first half of this track for the most part.
They see our Audi leaders now coming through Big Bend, switching up to the prototypes. Oh, possibly a little bit of contact there between Mark Witz and Ben Lafter. We got a car off, a Nissan. Jim Kessler taken to the escape road and coming back on.
Yeah, it looked like he just got in there a little bit too hot into the hairpin. Decided there that discretion was a better part of valor. Took it off the track and saved his car and as well as saved a few other cars.
A little side-by-side action between Hideki Koivisto and Serge Surovikin. And Hideki comes out on top through the narrow Collier section of corners. And Serge is still under attack, almost makes contact with Kessler, who once again turns it around, bangs it off the barrier, tries to bring it back on. And now, just to make matters worse, the Audis are streaming through. Oh, and he spins it off once again. Jim Kessler with a horrible first lap. I'm wondering if he's going to get it towed here.
And right now he's pulling back on track, but just got onto him right when I heard when he lost it there, and that was the turbo kicking in. And we've talked about it before. When that turbo kicks in, when you're in a low gear in these Nissans, that back end wants to come right back around on you. That's exactly what happened to Jim Kessler there.
Well, what this has done up at the front of the prototypes is Keith Ritchie already with a 2-second lead over Nicholas Mucanos, starting to stretch away. Clayton McLeod, however, who started this race in 5th, has moved his way up into 3rd, looking with a very strong first lap.
Okay, Steven Denton here lost it, one of the Nissans in the back of the pack, and that affected your GTO leaders as Cohen Klopman had to take evasive action, and then Ove Trangerede actually, in his process of taking evasive action, actually had to spin off track and lost several positions before he was able to get it back.
Wow, a lot of positions actually, as Trangerede was in 2nd before that incident and is now currently in 5th in class, it looks like. 7th, actually.
Yeah, and looking like here he's not sure what was going on with him, but he pulled off even a little bit more going down the front straight and let a few more guys by. So maybe he's just gathering his wits about him again. Oh, and back here, Jim Kessler, and Jim Kessler's around again. He ended up getting into it, I think, one of the GTOs also.
This is not looking good for the Georgia driver. Let's look at the replay, see if he actually made any contact. It was very close. Woo-hoo-hoo. It was tight, but Jess Coleman just narrowly kept his bumper out of him.
And Ove is lost another spot. He's letting Jess Coleman go by him. So,
I wonder, did Ove get a slowdown maybe?
Possibly, but I figured that would have been served by now. It is definitely possible with as wide as he had to go there to avoid all that.
I mean, with it being on the first lap, sometimes those can be a little bit more punishing than usual. But yeah, the fact that he's still serving it seems weird. So we'll have to wait and figure out if we can see what happened. Meanwhile, in the Audi's 3rd, up for grabs, as Koen Klopman managed to overtake Andres Slisons coming up to Sunset. Scary corner to make the overtake. Slisons not giving up, though, still holding on to the back of Koen.
Well, now he's going to have his sights set on Andrew Bakke, and he's up there fighting right now with the GTO lead with Anthony Rossomano, and after losing the lead because of that incident back there a little while ago, he's hungry to try to get it back here probably as fast as he can. He's already getting to the back wing of Andrew Bakke.
Did Koen lose the lead from that incident coming through Sunset on the previous lap, or?
Yeah, he did. He ended up having to take evasive action as well, and I'm wondering, too, if maybe he got a slowdown as well. As we got a pass for the lead here with Andrew Bakke getting to the inside of Anthony Rossomano, and Cohen is not able to take advantage of that. Oh, no, Cohen just runs to the back of him.
Getting slow off the line for Anthony Rossomano, and like you said, that caused Klopman to just rear-end him. And Andrew Bakke is probably enjoying the fact that he can streak away a little bit here, but a smooth move up into the hairpin. Let's watch that replay for that contact.
And Cohen was very quick on the radio to apologize for that also. So all things are good amongst the drivers there, and they are back on the throttles and try to get back going.
Possibly a misshift. I know it's easy to do that in these old Audis, and as Sean likes to say, a big center punch as Rossomano goes wide coming through Jean Dambien. This could hand it to Koen Klopman for sure. He sneaks to the inside of Le Mans. Can he get the run off the corner? He does. One more position for Anthony as it goes to Andres Slison from 2nd down to 4th. He's going to try and fight back down the Ullman Straight. He's got a nose ahead coming into Sunset and gets it back. He limits the damage back into 3rd. He goes, or does he? Goes in deep, tries to cut back to the apex, but he loses it to Slisons. Coming back to the inside, can't get the run off the corner. This is a back and forth slugfest for 3rd place. And as we've been paying attention to the Audis, let's go to the Nissans for a bit because we have a battle for 5th as AJ Bear trying to hassle Philip Lake. Bear started in 2nd, has slipped back a number of positions. Starts to drop off just a little bit of Lake. And unusual to see Lake this far back as well. Tends to be, has had good results so far in this season. Although, as we've seen, these cars proving very difficult to master, Adam, and mistakes could hand him more as the race progresses.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing some growing pains going on with a few guys out there here today that are just trying to, I guess, get their sea legs underneath them, for lack of a better word, with these Nissan GTP machines. They're a tough machine to get a handle on. I mean, they're very fun to drive, but there is a little bit of a learning curve with them, is what you're seeing out there, I think, with the likes of Jim Kessler and Stephen Denton.
And speaking of which, Denton is in the pits, so is Serge Surovikin, getting repairs done. Jim Kessler's out there still going amazingly. He might be getting the Dory Award for today. There we see we did see fourth John Keefe, who was in quite a battle with Philip Lake, coming through fourth and fifth. Oh, in the GTO lead, Sleeson, we see just out of spin. We got a battle for the lead as Klopman is trying to overtake Backy. He's got a nose into the inside, down into the kink, entering Sunset. Can't quite get it done. Swings a little bit wide. Is he going to get the momentum off of this bumpy 180-degree corner? Can't quite carry the speed. Andrew holds on to it for one more lap.
He's already looking in turn one, though, just kind of sticking his nose in there and letting him know he's still there. As Andrew kind of slows down a little bit, shuts that door, and you'll be able to get the good runoff here as they start heading down into three.
Riding on the bonnet of Klopman, now looking back at Klopman from the rear wing of Backy. Just getting so close, coming through turn 5. Tries to get the run off the corner. This is going to be a great opportunity as he's right tucked up under that rear spoiler. Through Big Bend they go. He looks to the inside, down into the hairpin, but he knows he's not close enough. He pulls back to the line.
You got to just think, sitting in Cohen's shoes, he knows that he's got the faster car here today, so he can bide his time and wait for the perfect opportunity. He doesn't have to try to force the issue. And I think that's what you're seeing here, is he's being very, very smart and very gingerly about getting around Andrew Bakke.
Takes another little look down into Cunningham. Backy gives him space, but doesn't lose the position. Let's stay on this. You're not missing anything in the GTP. Richie's still leading by 5 seconds. This is the closest battle for the top spots in either of the classes right now as they head towards Bishop. Klopman still poking and prodding, seeing if he can find anything. We understand that maybe Laughter has had a problem. Oh, and he's turned around. Looks like once again the power of the Nissan proving a little bit too much for the rear wings as that Commodore machine. Oh, he got a little bit of curve, it looked like.
Yeah, you could see the rear end bouncing around right before he lost it. And, as we got Cohen's making a move here for the lead, and Andrew Bakke shuts the door on him. But you did see how much that rear end just moves around in those GTP machines. As there it goes. There's Sunset. That's the Sunset corner in action if you've never seen it before.
Bumps in specific places means that weird lines can sometimes pay off with grip. Coming around the outside of turn 1, Kuhn is going to force the issue, but Andrew has the speed at the apex, doesn't have it at the exit. Once more, Klopman carrying the momentum. Much better on the brakes down into turn 3. Has he finally got it done? A little bit off the apex, but it looks like Kuhn has moved into P1. And as all this is happening, we're starting to see our back of our GTO class get caught by the GTP cars as Keith Ritchie is closing in on Jose Caballero. Oh, Bakke was trying to fight back. We were going to watch the traffic being navigated, but Andrew making this a hard fight for Kuhn.
And also in the back, just to update everybody in the back, another incident for Jim Kessler as he just got in the back of Jess Coleman a minute ago. So his days keeps getting worse for him.
All right, with that battle settling down, we now hop on board just looking over the shoulder of Keith Ritchie, still holding that 6.5 second gap over Rucanos. This traffic may cause that to swing. He's coming up onto the car of Jess Coleman, looks to the inside, very late, and Jess sneaks through at the apex Keith sneaks through at the apex with Jess having seen him coming. Up next is Alexander Link, and I think he's going to get a little bit of breather here as he's going to hit him as they come onto the Ullman Straight. This is where those Nissan drivers like to see themselves hit traffic, just breezing on by on the long straightaway. And again, as you can see, this is the Jaguar machine that Richie races for that team, currently leading the GTP championship for VCR.
Yeah, it's as these guys here is P2.
Oh, and McLeod, after what was starting to be a good run on the first half of this race, makes a mistake out of Sunset Bend.
See, it doesn't count as a commentator curse if I was getting ready to talk about him, does it?
No. Of course not. Let's watch on board one more time for McLeod. Just look at how bumpy it is, trying to get the power down. He sees it coming, can't steer out of it, and definitely gets a piece of that Armco. Let's see if we can get a current shot of that nose, how much damage he has. He might have escaped just a little bit here. I'm not seeing much on there, Adam.
No, me neither. On my end, his front end actually looks pretty good right now. So, great. Because you want all the front downforce you can get.
And however, that does move McLeod back to 5th. He lost a number of positions. He's already trying to challenge John Keefe for that spot as they come through Collier now.
Yeah, Keith Ritchie also, by the way, starting to work his way through some of the faster GTO cars. So he actually just had an off track a minute ago trying to get around Ove Trangereed. So he's got his hands full.
Undoubtedly, we stay on this battle for 4th position. John Keefe getting held up by some of the GTO traffic as well, working through Jean Dambien. Gets a horrible exit coming off of Le Mans. And Clayton does not need asking twice as he slips on by on the Ullman Straight. Ooh, a little bit of a look to the inside from John Keefe, thinking maybe he could attack again. And bad news for John. AJ Bear, who qualified in 2nd, is working his way back through the field, has now rocked up to the back of Keefe.
And Clayton McLeod, see them split in the cars. And we've seen that before in real world Sebring 12 hours action. And sometimes what happens is that the two cars that are overtaking the slower classes, they split them, lose track of each other, and they make contact out of one. But thankfully, the disaster was avoided there as everybody was able to keep their heads about them.
Alexander Link probably had his eyes bulging out of his sockets as those cars went around either side on the exit. Good job on him holding station. AJ Bear still holding on to the back of Keefe, who is trying not to let McLeod get away from him for that 4th spot. We ride on board with Bear now coming down to Cunningham. And it has been swinging back and forth between the classes. We haven't been missing anything in the Audis. They used to be pretty close together in some positions, but they're all splitting apart. In the meantime, it's all coming back together in the Nissans, the GTPs. And this right now is the closest battle in this class, this one for 4th position, which McLeod is starting to make it no longer a fight for that, but more of a fight for 5th as Keefe continues to slip backwards into the jaws of Bear.
And they do got two quick GTO machines with Ove Trangereed and Andrew Solanas coming up here that they're going to have to work around. And you saw what happened there a minute ago. That was close there.
You can see just how much McLeod got held up by Sleesons. His momentum interrupted. The downforce so different between these two cars. Despite that, was not caught by John Keefe. What's interesting is Bear seems to be struggling, even though he's closed on Keefe, to do anything more with him. Might have to hope for traffic to help him out. Ove Trangereed is up next for this trio.
Which, once they get around to Ove, they'll have Anthony Rosamano before before too long, and then Andrew Bakke after that. So he'll have plenty of traffic here to have to work around to maybe create a window.
They might be hitting him at the wrong time. Just manages to sneak around, but he denies the apex to Bear and loses a chunk of time on Keefe trying to get off the corner.
Yeah, now that Ove was off the gas and everything else, he had every intention of letting him completely through that corner. He just wasn't able to get there in time AJ wasn't able to get there in time to make it fully around. So now they got to contact Anthony Rosamano. Rosamano now halfway around. He's in the grass, able to keep it out of the fence.
Oh, but a lot of time being lost. He was in third place, that Martini machine. And he gets on the radio complaining about how aggressive that move was. I kind of don't blame McLeod, though. I mean, he had nowhere to go, and the car was not to that outside yet. Let's watch on board Rosamano.
I mean, it wasn't like it was a late move or anything either. I mean, he was showing that he was going that way, and Anthony Rosamano, I think, just trying to set himself up for the corner, didn't anticipate the closing right there.
Well, the bad news for Rosamano, he went from third to fifth, so that takes him off the podium. Now, did that give any damage to McLeod? That's the question. Still got some traffic that he's working through. Klopman, our leader in the GTOs, just sneaks to the inside, puts some separation between himself and Keefe. And actually, this is perfect timing because Keefe has nowhere to go through turns 4 and 5.
Well, that's exactly what AJ Bear wanted to see, and indeed it let him close up just a little bit. As now Keefe AJ Bear is right on the rear wing of Keefe.
Closes in under braking down into the hairpin, but he goes a little bit deep and can't quite make the apex, loses time. That's going to separate them just a little. We're 20 minutes into this sprint race, and action is thick and fast, but let's get you up to date on what the two classes look like in the top 5. Keith Ritchie leads the way. He's led every single lap so far. Hasn't looked like he's going to be challenged. 11 seconds back is Nicholas Mukanos, also looking solid in that P2 spot. Philip Lake currently rounds out the podium. Remember, we said he's been having a great season. Well, that form continues as everybody else around him has been having trouble, and he's been riding coolly up into the podium. Clayton McLeod has had to fight his way back through after a mistake in Sunset Bend. He's 10 seconds back from Lake, and he is in 4th. Then you go back to John Keefe, 5th position. Has barely been struggling to hold off AJ Bear, but some good smooth driving has helped John hold on to a top 5. Let's go to the Audis.
Yeah, Colin Klopman right now in the lead of your Audis. Andrew Bakke up there now in 2nd position in class. By the way, every single one of these guys in the top 5 that I'm going to mention here has had to fight through some sort of difficulty in this race already. Going back to Ove Trangerud, he's going to have not sure which Nissan it is, but he's getting around to that. I believe that was Laughter there. So Ove he's been able to overcome some adversity in this race and to be able to recover back into 3rd position. Andres Slianas is now in 4th position in class, and Anthony Rosamano rounds out your top 5 out of the Audis. And like I said, every single one of these guys, Joe, has had to overcome some sort of adversity.
It certainly has seemed chaotic for these Audi Quattros as we watch the Martini number 12 machine work his way through turn 1 to continue another lap. It's starting to close down to the tail end of this race, though. And our closest battle of all of the classes is still the battle for 5th, as Bear hasn't given up on Keefe. This has got to be frustrating for Bear, who qualified all the way up in 2nd, feeling like he should be farther up. Do you think it's the buffeting of the car ahead that's keeping him from getting a chance to attack, or does it seem like Bear is making mistakes?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. It's flat track, so in the high-speed corners, the buffeting probably definitely is playing a role. But Bear has not had the smoothest race, and he's usually pretty smooth. He's had a little bit of trouble today. I mean, you saw it right off the bat today, where he just had a really, I don't want to say bad, I want to say mistimed start. And I think he's still recovering from that in a way, too.
Absolutely, as he tries to carry the speed coming off of Sunset Bend, both he and Keith using every inch of the track. And we should note, too, that Bear is an Australian, or at least he's an Australia-New Zealand club, and the driver ahead of him, Keith, is an Indiana driver. So this is middle of the afternoon for John, but way late at night for AJ Bear. So he could be pretty tired in that car. And that's another thing that can affect these drivers here on iRacing. Meanwhile, in second place, Nicholas Mukanos has been caught by Philip Lake. Now, has there been a mistake by Nicholas? I didn't think Philip was that close. Maybe caught some traffic last lap for Nicholas Mukanos. I'm going to go back and look. He was 3 seconds slower. Not seeing any traffic in the lap so far. Oh, he had a big mistake, and Jean Dembien nearly looped the car, but managed to catch a big slide, and that is what threw away the time and has allowed Philip Lake to look at one more potential step on the podium.
Well, he was needing a mistake to be made, and I guess he found it. So now he's caught up in the draft, and felt like he'll just have to hang on here and try to make something of it. He can't afford to lose any ground at this stage in the race. We've only got we're now down to below 6.5 minutes. As you see, I believe that was Cedric Coyle pulled off there to let those guys go. So now that the hammer's down, it's time to go.
And of course, Mukanos racing for the All-American Racers Toyota, and the Team Sauber Mercedes being driven by Philip Lake. This is inter-team battles happening between these two, and these points matter. Ove Trangarade seems stationary. Oh. He had a big hit with the wall, and this was coming through Tower. He was chasing down Andrew Backey. Seemed like he was making progress, pushed a little too hard. And even though he had four-wheel drive, it was not enough to keep the dirt from sending him around.
This is like four-wheel drive, yeah, it might help you in the dirt a little bit, but not with slick tires. I mean, so that dirt just sent him right around once the power of that engine kicked on and the turbo and everything else on that machine. So it hard contact into that arm go.
Yeah, we got a really good feel for it riding on board in the replay of the kind of thwack that he had into that metal. But meanwhile, the leader in the GTO class, Koen Klopman, has been unfazed since he took the lead back. Backey is 8.5 seconds behind, and that number 10 looks like he is not going to be, or that number 1, I should say, is not going to be messed with unless he makes a major mistake the rest of this race. Meanwhile, the battle in the GTP class for the second spot on the podium is still up for grabs.
Yeah, Mukanos still doing what he needs to do to try to hang on over Philip Lake. So actually two great battles still going on in the GTP class because you also still have Keith and AJ Bear out there fighting. But their intervals right now are about the same between these two pairs. Just obviously one's for the podium, one not so much yet. And so now, in fact, actually, let's go back to that Keith. As soon as I say that, Bear gets a great run out of Sunset going into 1. So actually, let's stick here for just a minute as they start heading down to the turn 3.
Oh, and I think you meant Lake and Mukanos, actually.
Oh, yeah, you're correct. I was like watching two different battles, trying to make sure I'm keeping everybody straight here. But
I understand. I got lost too. I was like, which one is he talking about? But anyways, Lake still putting the pressure on Mukanos. Oh, look at him, just great under braking down into the hairpin, closes the gap to less than a car length. He can't quite get the power down off of that slow corner though, as Mukanos gets himself a little bit of safety up through the S's down into Cunningham Corner. And this is where it gets technical and scary, and they're coming up on traffic to boot, and that's their own class, Stephen Denton, which is gonna make it even harder to overtake.
Yeah, we've seen the kind of trouble that we've already had a couple overtaking scenarios with the Audis. So thankfully they catch him in a good spot and able to get by, and I think he kind of helped facilitate that a little bit. So the battle is still heated up.
As Bill Zahn would say, that is a bear claw for Stephen Denton, lifting at just the right time to let them through. A little bit more traffic. This time it's an Audi, Jess Coleman, that they're going to sneak by on the Ullman Straight. What is this going to do for these two cars? The draft is definitely helping Philip Lake close in. You can see the defensive line that Mukanos has to take down into Sunset. They're going to go side by side into the corner. Can Mukanos hold him off with the inside line? The bumps tend to be a little bit harsher on there. He tries to get the run off the corner, and he's denied Lake that position one more time.
Well, you got to be thinking that we might get the white flag next time by, so time is running out, but he took every advantage of that opportunity that he could there without causing disaster. So we'll have to see if he's able to pull it off again here. I don't think he's going to get a good chance at Hairpin, but he might get another good chance at Sunset here the next time around.
He's very close. He didn't quite get the run off the corner, but he was close enough. He might get a whiff of the draft. That Sauber Mercedes is losing opportunities, and you can tell that Mukanos is feeling the pressure as he stayed inside for much of there. Just kind of drifts it into the apex early to try and hold off the car of Lake. And once again, Lake is struggling to get traction off of that 7th turn. Meanwhile, the battle for 5th also up for grabs as Keith, under threat from Bear, down into the same corner. Gives a little bit of room at the apex, but Bear can't take advantage.
Yeah, I've been watching these guys. They've been fighting hard like that last couple laps. Keith cannot get away from AJ Bear. As AJ Bear, I think, overcoming his earlier mistakes, has started to get this place figured out. He's putting down some pretty quick lap times. But now these guys are coming up on Stephen Denton. They are not going to catch him in as advantageous as a place as what Connis and Lake did. And you can see it right there. Is now AJ Bear all over John Keith. Oh, AJ Bear has to go off track. Oh, the wiggle out of that car when he came back on the track. It's a miracle that thing is still going straight.
Unfortunately for Bear, he is not Dale Earnhardt, and I think he's going to get a cut course for that potentially, as he has to give the time back. The white flag is out for Keith Ritchie, 14-second gap over second place, which is still up for grabs. Mukanos gets a little bit of a breather as Alexander Leak denies the ideal line from Philip Lake through turn 1. And there's some separation from that mistake from Bear having to take to the grass in Bishop. The gap is now 1 second between himself and Keith. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get back up to him before this lap is over. So the closer battle is definitely for second. Mukanos trying desperately to fend off Philip Lake.
Yeah, he might have a little...
What's happened to Ritchie? Our leader is off. This is in Collier coming out of Cunningham. Oh, and second place is coming up to them. This is all closing together. Traffic has caught these guys. Is this going to make for an opportunity? That's Anthony Rosamano that is caught up in it. A little bit of contact between Philip Lake and the car of Nicholas Mukanos. Lake has gotten by him in the chaos. He's trying to overtake the lapped car of Jim Kessler, who gets off to the side, stays to the inside. This has allowed just a little breathing room for Keith Ritchie, who's trying desperately to stretch away. Last lap shenanigans. Keith Ritchie, how much damage does that car have? Is it going to slow him down enough for Philip Lake to steal a win from third to first in the final lap? They've got one more corner to go. If Keith Ritchie can hold this together, can just keep the car straight coming through Sunset Bend, get onto the power smooth. That's all you need, Keith. He comes off the corner. Despite a scare, Keith Ritchie's going to come away with the win, but Philip Lake sneaks into... Oh no, Nicholas Mukanos gets second back from Philip Lake.
And here comes AJ Bear and John Keith.
It's going to be a drag race to the line. Who's going to get it? And it's going to be AJ Bear.
Woo!
Wow. There was 1/100th between Bear and Keith at the line. Incredible stuff. Let's not forget, we have another class to worry about. Koen Klotman with a 10-second lead leading the way over Backy. Wow. First through 6, essentially, was under question mark all the way to the line. That was incredible stuff.
This is why you always go, and you always go hard right until a checkered flag. It doesn't matter if it's the white flag. You keep the hammer down and you keep going because anything can happen. And that was definitely a case there where something almost really did happen.
And we've seen that a number of times here as we continue to watch our leader, the number 1 car in the Audis, work his way towards the checkered flag. We're going to look at the replays after this finishes. But credit to Kuhn. Remember, he did not have this one handed to him. He had to fight his way back to the lead, had his fair share of problems as he comes around Sunset Bend nice and slow to make sure that he gets it smoothly to the line. Give the win to Kuhn Kloppman here in round 10 of the Kamel GT Series. We're going to go to the replay, but Andrew Backey did take second in the GTO class. All right. Here's what happened to Richie coming down to Cunningham. Did he get some curb here? Didn't look like it. Looks like just maybe the rear came around on exit.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. It just kind of broke loose on him, and then had trouble getting it back on track and getting it back going. And when he pulled out on track, it kind of created a little bit of a logjam behind him, as everybody saw. And that things got pretty intense there for a few. But those GTO cars sometimes they're or GTP cars, excuse me, are sometimes a little tough to get going back straight.
All right, we're going to watch the finish with Bear now, just to see how close this is. I wonder if we could get a slow-mo of the line. Maybe a nice above shot to get us a real feel for just how close this is. Battling him side by side through Sunset. And then to the line. Look at that. Just incredibly close between them. Couldn't quite get the best angle from the blimp, unfortunately. But, man, it was inches between them. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews here for the Kamel GT Series. But stick around because on screen we're going to have all the upcoming races here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Welcome back to Sebring International Raceway. We just watched round 10 of the iRacing Kamel GT series, and there were some great battles throughout, but the ending really was the icing on the cake. Keith Ritchie snuck away with the win. He almost gave it away, though. It was 1 second at the line, despite it being 11 seconds, up to 14 seconds at some points in the race. Philip Lake came home in second place, just getting past Nicholas Mukanos. Clayton McLeod comes home in fourth in the GTP class, and AJ Bear barely sneaking by in fifth place past John Keefe, who came home in sixth. Ben Laughter, a bit of an uneventful race for him. We didn't see a whole lot of him on screen. Came home in seventh in class. Mark Witz in eighth. And rounding out the cars that did finish in the GTPs, Hideki Koivisto in ninth. Adam?
Yeah, so now looking at the GTO winner, Colin Klotman, put on a pretty good show, having to overcome a little bit to try to get back up there in the lead, and he's able to pull off the class win here today. Andrew Bakke coming home in second in your GTO, Audi GTOs. Andres Solanas coming home in 12th overall, third in class. Anthony Rosamano, Alexander Link, Jess Coleman, Cedric Poyle all round out your cars for the GTOs that ended up on the lead lap in class. Then you got Jim Kessler out there in the Nissan GTP, and then unfortunately Ove Trengerid wasn't able to finish out the day, had an accident there a couple laps ago, and his day ended early, 4 laps down from the overall leader. Jose Caballao and Stephen Denton also had a little bit of trouble here today.
And then further cars that did not finish, Serge Sorovikin, Brian Shanahan, and Colin Stark rounding out the field. Let's go to our interviews. Let's start with our second place finisher in the GTO class, Andrew Bakke, and talk to him about what probably seemed pretty topsy-turvy for those Audis. Andrew, you managed to come home in second. It looked like potentially for a while you could maybe get a win, but it seemed like every GTO car out there was just up and down the order.
Yeah, there was a lot of attrition in that race. I've just been watching the replays of some of those incidents. I still don't know what happened to Ove as he was chasing me down, but yeah, it was a great race.
Ove unfortunately had a spin coming out of Tower Corner, it seemed like. Until that incident, were you ready to try and fend him off, or were you ready to settle for third?
I was not ready to settle for third. I knew that Cohen. I knew I was going to have to let him by me when he was hounding me. I was hoping to be able to stick in his draft long enough and make fewer mistakes, but that didn't happen. But yeah, I was going to do everything I could to keep Ove behind me.
And speaking of the draft, was that having a big effect in these Audis on a course like this? I know there's some pretty long straightaways, but having not experienced it myself, how big of a hole in the air do they punch?
It's a pretty big hole. Even with the Nissans on some of our tracks, the Audi will end up almost drafting past the Nissan at the end of a straight, like at Watkins Glen or something. So yeah, I mean it wasn't too difficult to hold on to Cohen until I went a little wide in one of the braking zones and lost touch.
Well, still managed to hold that second place all the way to the end. Again, congratulations on the podium.
Thank you.
That was Andrew Bakke, second place finisher in the GTO class. Next up, Adam, would you like to talk to Nicholas Mukanos about what was probably pretty exciting for him?
Yeah, it ended up being a crazy finish to the Nissan field here today. Nick, you got a pretty big front row seat of what happened there on the last lap. Tell us things from your perspective.
Oh man, I don't even know what to say about that. I saw the back marker and I heard my spotter, so I thought he was going. I know I had the position on him, but I knew he was going to cut inside. And then when I rounded the corner, it was it was chaos. I didn't know. I was pretty much boxed in, and Philip took advantage, so I was down to the end.
Well, of course, some of that was precipitated by the Keith Ritchie spin there to kind of jumble everything back up. Did you have a glimmer of hope that maybe he might still have a little bit of trouble there when he got back going, and maybe he might have a chance at the win?
Yeah, Keith, keeping up with Keith is kind of a pipe dream for me. But when I rounded that corner, in about half a second, I went from thinking maybe I could get by him to Philip's going to take the second from me. So,
Well, and one thing that I noticed here quite a bit today was some of the Audi GTO machines, having a little bit of trouble negotiating lap traffic. What was your experience with that?
it was okay for me. I had a lot of practice with traffic before the race, and my experience with the Audis was pretty good. I didn't have any issues, really.
All right. Well, hey, congratulations on a podium finish here this afternoon. Anybody you'd like to thank real quick?
Just Keith and Rob for setting this stuff up, and everyone else, Andrew, everyone who fights to keep Kamel alive, I guess.
Well, it certainly is a fun series, and hopefully we can help bring in a few more drivers for you guys.
Yep, it's been good.
All right. Well, hey, Nick, once again, congratulations, and we'll be seeing you here pretty soon, I'm sure.
That was Nicholas Makanos, our third place finisher in the GTP class. We're going to talk to one more driver, fourth place finisher, Clayton McLeod, another one who had his fair share of adventures throughout. A lot of things to talk about, Clayton. So let's start with your spin coming out of Sunset. How are the bumps feeling from within this old machinery? What is that experience like?
Well, actually, it's usually pretty good, but at that point in time, I was trying to stay inside of an Audi while I was chasing Nick, and just hit one of the bumps at the wrong time, and that kind of sent the rear around.
And we unfortunately witnessed that one with you making a little bit of contact with the inside barrier. And speaking of the Audis, you and Anthony Rossimano had a little bit of a back and forth at one of the corners, tower, I believe it was. Trying to sneak that into there. At least I'm pretty sure that was you that made side-by-side contact. Trying to look at my notes here.
Yeah, it was.
Coming down into tower, what was your thought process on that outside move? From us, we felt that it was fair game. What is your perspective?
Well, the closing speeds on these things are so great that usually something like that goes off without a hitch. I mean, we're not usually beside each other for too long, but there we were just beside each other a little longer than normal, and just wasn't enough room.
And eventually you did manage to get past Keith and Bear and get yourself up into fourth position. Are you satisfied with that, considering how chaotic this one was?
Yeah, it wasn't a bad race, I guess. I mean, if I hadn't spun there, I was hoping to be fighting with Nick the whole race. Him and I usually have some pretty good battles, and just wasn't to be today.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like settling just outside of the podium will have to do. Again, thanks for coming and talking to us.
It was still fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for all your help with the lap guides.
Thanks for everybody coming out, too.
Absolutely. That's Clayton McLeod, Canadian, coming home in fourth today after starting in fifth in class. The Jaguar driver giving a little bit to his tally in the VCR championship. However, we're going to wrap it up today. And of course, we want to thank the Kamel GT community for all gathering together and helping fund these broadcasts. We have a lot of fun doing these. And of course, to Rob Olenek for organizing everyone underneath him to get this together. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcasts. They are listed on your screen. And additional thanks to Eric Ekholm and Casey Lalonde, who provide the music for our broadcasts. Their contacts can be found listed on screen as well. Thanks to the team today, Adam, Amjad, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel or Facebook at /Global Sim Racing Channel. Our next race, we're going down under. It'll be Phillip Island, Saturday, May 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. However, until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.